I can say to the Hawaiian people is that if it wasn't for them and all the fans, I wouldn't have had a life like I've had.
From a kid living on the mean streets of Chicago to an entertainment sports legend in Hawaii, meet wrestling icon Gentleman Ed Francis, next on Long Story Short.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in high definition.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. In this episode of Long Story Short, we'll talk with legendary wrestler and wrestling promoter Ed Francis. We catch up with him at age 86. He was a household name in the Hawaii of the 1960s and 70s during the run of the wildly popular 50th State Big Time Wrestling. Long before his involvement with wrestling, however, Edmund Charles Francis Jr. began life in the tough city streets of Chicago in the midst of the Great Depression. I've read what you ate, the sandwiches you ate during the Depression. What were they?
Oh, yeah. Well, they called it charity then. I used to go with my mother, and we stand in line at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they give you some cheese and dried beans and a big can of lard and all that kind of stuff, and that's what you took home to eat. And I used to make, and then they gave her flour. So my mother used to make bread, and then I would put lard on a piece of bread with some ketchup and salt and pepper. And I'd put it in the oven and let it warm up a little bit, and that's what I'd eat.
Ew.
But it tasted good.
How did your parents handle that depression?
Finally, when it hit real hard and my father lost the business, he didn't work for 6 years. He couldn't get a job anyplace. And my mother went to work she worked several different jobs, but she worked for the Vassar Underwear Company. And I remember she got $1 a day there. And then she got a job working at an ice cream parlor that was right down the street from us. This guy's name was Pete Palestini. He had his ice cream parlor, and he hired my mother. So she worked a few little jobs like that, and that's how we survived.
How many children?
It's just my brother and I.
So 4 people living on reduced income.
Yeah.
And what was life like in the? I know for a while you moved to public housing. Were you in rough neighborhoods?
That was quite a ways after that. When I was around 12 or 13 years old, we moved to public housing. But before that, I had all kinds of things that I did. I made a little shoe shine thing, and I would go in all the bars.
How old were you?
I was about, I guess, 9 or 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I'd go in the bar, and I knew nobody's going to want me to shine shoes, but they had a free lunch counter there. So I'd come in with the thing on my shoulder and I'd go over and make a sandwich, you know. They had good food in those bars. And the bartenders never kicked me out or anything, you know. That's after, of course, prohibition was Roosevelt, I forget where they repealed that law.
After Ed Francis's family lost the business, life was bleak in the depression-ravaged, rat-infested Chicago of the 1930s and 40s. But a casual visit by young Ed to a gym near his home would plant the seeds for a better life with pay. When did the wrestling bug hit?
Well, the wrestling bug hit me when I was about 12 years old. That was when I was already in the Julia Lathrop homes where we moved.
The public housing?
Yeah, and I went to this park called Hamlin Park, and it was like a circus when you walked in there, because there were wrestlers and weightlifters and hand balancers, and they had a high bar, guys swinging on that. And I looked around there and I said, man, what's going on here, you know? And so I tried to get in with all the guys, you know.
What kind of personality did you have? Were you a showman?
Well, I had it underneath a showman, but I was really shy to begin with. But there was a wrestling coach there named Lou Taliber, and he took me under his wing, and they started teaching me amateur wrestling. And then I gravitated toward they had a big weightlifting platform there, the German-American Weightlifting Club were lifting there. So they eventually got around to showing me how to do the different lifts. And they showed me how to do a lift called the one-arm bent press. And that's where you rock a weight to your shoulder and you bend down between your legs and push it up. And I finally got to be able to do my body weight with one arm over my head.
Wow.
So when they used to go around they were paid to go around to different taverns and perform the weightlifting, and they'd take me along. So now I do the one-arm bent press, and all the Germans are drinking beer and clapping their hands.
And did the weightlifting keep you out of trouble?
Probably did.
Because I'm sure there was trouble to be found in the area.
Yeah, well, I was coming home from school, and I was in high school then, and there was a car parked near the Julia Lathrop homes, and as I was walking by, this guy stepped out of the car and he said, "Hey, I want to speak to you." Then he showed his badge, and he was a police detective. He said, "If I was sitting in the car," I said, "Well, I wonder what the heck I did, you know. I thought they were going to arrest me for something." So I got into the car, and they started showing me pictures of criminals in there. And they said, "This guy was went for murder, this guy rape, this guy," and they went on and on. He said, "We want you to help us." I said, "Well, how can I do that?" He said, "Well, meet us here tonight at 8 p.m., and we'll tell you then. But don't tell anybody else where you're going."
Young Ed Francis met the two lawmen, who then drove him to a place nicknamed Little Sicily in Chicago. The men told him to go into a nearby bar, purchase whiskey, and return to their car. Then the officers took Francis back into the bar and confronted the bar owner for selling to a minor. Ed Francis left the bar as instructed by the officers and headed for a rendezvous point where they would pick him up. Just as the teenager thought the ordeal was over, the night took a scary turn.
So I finally got over to the Bowman Dairy Company. I'm standing there waiting and waiting. And all of a sudden, a big Lincoln pulled up, a Lincoln automobile, and out jumped two guys. One of them was in the uniform, soldier's uniform. And they grabbed me and put me in the car and took me back to the bar. And they took me in the back room, and they told me what these cops did, that they're trying to get this guy to pay money.
That was a shakedown.
Shakedown. And so they're telling me they said, "If we ever get these guys, we're gonna kill them." These two detectives, they told me. So the phone rang in the phone booth. So I go to he said, "Hey, this is for you." The bartender said, so I went in there, and there was a detective on there. He said, "Listen to me." He said, "Watch for a good spot," and then he said, "Run right out the door." And he said, "And turn right and run down, and we'll pick you up, so you can get out of there." So I went back and told the guys that was detectives, and they told them what happened. And that's when he said, "Well, don't worry about those guys." He said, "But don't ever do this again, and don't ever come back in this neighborhood again." And he gave me money, and we went to the streetcar so I could get in the streetcar to go home.
Oh, they escorted you to the streetcar?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the soldier did. And he said, "You can look in the paper tomorrow." He said, "These two guys are going to be dead."
Wow, and you were 15 years old. At what point did you set off on a wrestling career?
I found a fellow named, his name was Carl Pagello, and he was an old-time wrestler, and he had a wrestling gymnasium. And I used to go there all the time, and then he would put on shows at like the Shriners clubs and all that. They just put mats out, and I'd go there and wrestle. Somebody would just wrestle amateur. And then he started teaching me some professional wrestling. But then the war came along, and my brother was 3 years older than me. He joined the Navy, and my cousin, who was about my brother's age, he joined the Navy, and I wanted to go. So I couldn't, my parents wouldn't sign the papers for me to go. So I found a way to get around that.
Ed Francis served in the Coast Guard during World War II. By January of 1945, Ed was discharged and spent some time as a sketch model at the Art Institute in Chicago. Soon after, he felt a calling to a profession he'd been introduced to as a teenager.
And then I started wrestling for Pagello again, and then there was a fellow named Ray Fabiani. Ray Fabiani was a concert violinist with the Philadelphia Philharmonic Orchestra, and also he went to Chicago, and he loved wrestling. And he got hooked up with the promoter in Chicago, and he saw me at Carl Pagello's gym, and he signed me up as one of his wrestlers. So he decked me out and got my hair bleached and decked me out with a cape with sequins on it and all that stuff, you know.
At that point, did you acquire your moniker, Gentleman Ed Francis?
No, that didn't come up until Al Ventry's. So then my career went on from there.
You wrestled all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Were you usually the good guy or not?
Sometimes one way and sometimes another way, depending on what the promoter wanted me.
So what are you like as a bad guy?
I did a pretty good job, I guess, because I had plenty of riots.
Is that right? People got so angry at you, they stormed the ring?
Oh, yeah. By
the early 1960s, Ed Francis was making frequent stops in Hawaii, wrestling for promoter Al Karasik. During a conversation with Karasik, Francis saw a golden opportunity he knew he couldn't pass up.
Well, when I was wrestling for Al Karasik, and he told me that he was thinking of selling out his business, I thought that'd be a good opportunity where I had all my kids, and be a good opportunity to get off the road, you know, because it was killing me and killing them, not having their father home, you know, all the time. So I asked him how much he wanted for the promotion, to have the rights for the promotion. And he said he would agree to $10,000. So a friend of mine, a promoter in Oregon, Don Owen, who liked me a lot, and Don gave me the $10,000. I paid Al, brought everybody over. And
how old were you at the time?
I was in my 30s, I guess.
And doing business, how was that for you?
Tough, because now I was an outsider coming in. And now I'm sitting in Al Karasik's office. And in order to get to Al's office, I had to pass Ralph Yampuku's desk.
Who is a promoter extraordinaire and a fixture?
I told him I was trying to get television. He said, "You get television? Why would people come to the matches if they're going to watch television, watch them on TV?" I said, "Well, it doesn't work that way, Ralph." I said, "So a certain way you have to build things up and not show them a main event or whatever, and then they'll come to the matches." He said, "Nah, it'll never work." He said, "Never work." So they all expected me to fail after a few months, you know.
But you'd seen it work differently on the mainland.
Oh, yes, yeah. So then when it came around to getting a television, I went to all the stations, and they were all saying, "Oh, we don't want that phony wrestling on TV in Hawaii and all that stuff." And finally, I think it was at KHVH when Kaiser owned that station. Danny Kawakami was the program director there. And I finally talked him into it for 13 weeks. He said, "We'll give you a shot at this." He said, because I went back to him 10 times.
And you wanted a live show from the studio at KHVH, TV and radio.
Yeah, and then I had to figure out who I was going to have do the announcing. A couple of guys told me about Lord Blair's. And so I contacted him, and he'd been wrestling for Al Karasik for years. So he loved Hawaii because he was a surfer. All his kids loved the beach. So he jumped at the chance and came over and.
So he agreed to be your narrator, your on-air guy.
Yeah, and he had a lot of contacts through wrestlers too. You know, different wrestlers that I didn't know out of Los Angeles area and all that. So two of us put together like that. We did it. We got a lot of wrestlers that come over because they'd say, "What do you want? How much can I make?" I said, "Well, you want to come to Hawaii? It's just like a vacation. Stay here for a few months, you know, or whatever." So, and you get your airfare back and forth, and we'll give you $150 a week.
You had some wild characters. Did you create those characters, or did they come to you fully blown up and crazy?
Sometimes we had to create them, like the missing link. You know, we named him the missing link. But he brought the shrunken head on, and he talked about that. And, so he wasn't a great performer in the ring, but he was a great performer on television. So that sold it, you know.
May I mention some names to you? Could you maybe give me some thoughts about each of these wrestlers that you worked with? Handsome Johnny Baren.
Great guy, but crazy. He really was a little crazy in things. I remember one time he left. He was always a great drawing card, but I never knew what he was going to do on the television show. So he and Phil Arnone were conjuring all this stuff up. So when I come out to interview him, now he's sitting there. He's going to wrestle Billy White Wolf. Now he's sitting there with a teepee. He's sitting in front of the teepee with a feather in his head, smoking a cigar.
Another name, Ripper Collins. People love to hate Ripper Collins with his deliberate mangling of the Hawaiian language, saying mui and maui, moi and kami mami instead of kamehameha.
Yeah, Ripper was the ultimate howlie. and then when he started talking about Georgia and mid-juleps and all that stuff, and get everybody mad at him.
And he was doing it with great deliberation and forethought. What was he like off ring and off stage?
Just a good guy.
Wasn't like that at all?
Mm-mm.
But he really knew how to just rile people up. People who aren't wrestling fans would know Tosh Togo, who became Odd Job on the James Bond movie Goldfinger. What was your relationship like with him? And I think you did some shaping of him in his career.
Yeah, well, a promoter came over from, Tosh had been wrestling for me for a while. The promoter came over from England, and he came to my house, and I lived on Mokapa Boulevard. And he said that the movie producers over in England wanted a Oriental guy with a good body. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I think I got the right guy for you.
His name was Harold Sakata.
Harold Sakata, yeah. And he won a silver medal in the Olympics too. Harold did for weightlifting. And so he had a fantastic body. And so the arrangements were going back and forth, and finally they were going to bring him over to England to test out for the part. And I told him, I said, I knew what the storyline was going to be. I said, Tosh, what you got to do is go down to a costume shop and get a derby. And you wear the derby, and you put some bricks, because he could break bricks with his hand. Put some bricks in his briefcase, and handcuff the briefcase to you.
That was your idea?
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
And when you got off the plane, because they said they were going to have news people there and everything, he got off the plane. I didn't see it, but I was told that he got off and he took the handcuffs off and opened it up, put the bricks down, and they had this one brick across that, and he broke it, cut the part.
A legend was born.
Yeah.
Among others in the ring for wrestling promoter Ed Francis were two of his sons, Bill and Russ, who went on to pro football. Moody and disgruntled fans came with the territory at 50th State big-time wrestling matches. Ed Francis recalls that an incident at the Civic Auditorium in 1961 got the fans so riled up, it turned into a life-threatening riot. Tell me about the riot. It was, Curtis Iokia, a Hawaiian, versus Nef Maiawa, Samoan, and there was race that played a role in the riot, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I forget how Curtis beat Nef, but I remember, I think I wasn't even standing outside the locker room, and I heard this riot coming off, people screaming. I came out, and Curtis was coming back from the ring, and a couple of cops were escorting him to get back in the locker room, and Nef was laying in the ring.
Did he do something? He was a heel, a bad guy.
Yeah.
Did he do something bad to Nef?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but then the people went completely wild, and there was a sergeant there, Sergeant Capellas, who always worked for me on the wrestling nights, you know. And they picked up some chairs, and the chairs in the Pacific, that time there were like 4 chairs that were together. So they picked it up, and they had Capellas and I against a ring. And he's hitting him, and I'm hitting him. And they're going down so we could get out of there ourselves. And somebody called the Metro Squad, and it was Larry Mayhow. I think he was a lieutenant then, or a sergeant. He was handling the Metro Squad at that time. And they came down with police dogs and everything, and man, it was a real turmoil there.
And those were the bruisers. They were big guys.
Yeah. And then somebody grabbed the guy's gun out of his holster, and Luigi knocked it out of the guy's hand and grabbed the gun and ran in the locker room with it. Then gave it, after the riot was over, gave it back to the police officer. So it could have been a lot worse things happen.
Now, if that happened today, wrestling would have been banned from the auditorium.
Yeah.
But what happened instead? Life went on?
This is funny. I went to the police station the next day. They wanted to know, what's going on and how this riot began and all that, I guess. So I'm coming up the steps, and out of the police station is about 4 Samoan guys. One's got a bandage on his head and one got an arm in a sling. And they said, "Hey, Mr. Francis, what's going on next week at the Civic?"
It was acceptable damage? Was that the idea?
I guess so.
The days of wrestling have changed so much. You closed out your business in the late 70s, and then I think it was probably in the early or in the 80s, that's when wrestling went national. And it ceased to be a local phenomenon as it had been in the past. It's all national, and I can't imagine the security that must be present at the the WWF matches, which are just spectaculars of television and pyrotechnics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Vince McMahon put everybody out of business, really. But he was a great promoter. He's doing a fantastic job.
Did you fight that trend, or did you see it coming and say?
Yeah, I saw it coming.
And you decided, I'm not going to hang in when there's not going to be a good return?
Yeah, because you have to have a lot of money, do it.
Well, that must have been really hard, because you weren't ready to retire, and you were seeing the end of a business, and there was nothing like it to go to.
Yeah. Went back to the ranch.
Which you knew how to ranch.
Yeah.
And you already owned a ranch.
Yeah, old cowboy.
So how old are you now?
86.
How does it feel?
Horrible.
Why do you say that?
Well, you always have flashbacks of, when you were young. I still have dreams about going to a wrestling match and driving 200 miles and arriving there and getting out of my car and realize I didn't bring my tights and my shoes along with me. I have dreams like that all the time. So now I can't, what am I going to do? I can't perform. And I'm worried about what the promoter's going to say. He's going to be mad and I'm in the main event. So I guess that wrestling stuff still stays with you over the years.
Wrestling promoter Ed Francis has stayed with us over the years through the many memories of diehard fans. I spoke with him on a Hawaii visit he made in December of 2012, and people still recognized him on the street, calling out, "Hey, Mr. Francis!" His amazing life is chronicled in the book Gentleman Ed Francis Presents 50th State Big Time Wrestling, which was released shortly after our conversation. For Long Story Short and PBS Hawaii, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Ahui ho kako.
For audio and written transcripts of this program and all episodes of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, visit pbshawaii.org.
Well, I used to test the waters all the time. Before a big match was coming off, I got disappointed quite a few times on this too. I'd go through the Ala Moana Center, go through all the stores and everything, and there were several times I went through, not one person said a word to me. Then the sweat would break out of my head. Like, my God, no house tonight, you know. But I always did have a pretty good house, but I thought that was kind of a gauge. I'd say, well, if nobody talks to me, then nobody's talking about wrestling on TV.